Welcome to Strategic Alignment, ensuring long-term profitability in multi-brand franchising, where three industry leaders delve into the intricacies of multi-unit and multi-brand ownership. Join Jeff Bannon and Greg Sisa, succession planners at the Rawls Group, along with Nate Riordan, founder of West Coast Franchise Law, as they explore a wide range of topics, from franchise approval and crucial nuances to consider before finalizing business agreements, to business structures, exit transition strategies, and estate plans. This series covers it all. In the franchise world, the franchisor is not just a business partner, but also a key player in all your franchise ventures.
For me, the most interesting thing about that question starts with the fact that you're asking for strategies, and a lot of times, and almost without exception, what happens is that our clients will be in one brand and get the opportunity to go to another brand. So there's never a strategy in the first place to do this, like, oh, we'll do this brand for 5 years, and then we'll add the other one, and then we'll add the other one. They're sort of always looking for that deal, and they always want to add it. And so from a strategy standpoint, each time a new opportunity comes up, you got to think through, first, does your new brand care about your ownership of the old brand? I know people who've split their ownership up into different family members. And so you got one person with a burger brand and another person with a different burger brand. And that's a little fraught in terms of crossover. Ideally, what you want to do is find out, okay, can I own the two brands? That's your first, from an ownership standpoint, that's your first question. Can I own the two brands? Assume the answer is yes. And assume that you qualify for the second brand, your new brand, for all the reasons, the operational reasons, and you've demonstrated to them that you've got enough heft, enough back of the office that you can take on a different brand. From there, it really goes to banking. Are you going to bank the whole thing, or are you going to bank it separately? You always want to have your brands in separate entities. Do not put them in the same entity. I mean, it might seem simple and go without saying, but it doesn't go without saying. You always put your brands in separate entities. That way you have the option of banking them separately or together, as long as they are separately, because then you don't have to, if you have them in separate entities, then you've got a separate banking system where your deposits are being pulled into their own brand specific operating account and then going up to make the payments. And it gives you the option of having your stuff banked in tranches with two different banks, or together one whole piece wrapping it up. And that's, that's banking. I'm curious what you guys think about ownership. I mean, I've got some stuff to think, that I could add about ownership, but from a succession planning standpoint, now we've got a couple of brands, and what do you guys look for in terms of what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I think that's, you hit on two key things, in my opinion. Is your office ready for that? Number one, do you have the support group to take on another franchise? And then from the banking and the financial standpoint, it's understanding that two separate entities are going to be an important dynamic from a ownership transfer piece of it, meaning that if you have one key manager or one family member very interested in one franchise and they're very much sunk onto the burger side of operations, for example, what you don't want to be in a position to do or be forced to do is have to gift, I'd like to reward that key manager or that family member with some ownership, but I don't want to pull in that other entity, the same type of transfer. But from an ownership perspective, I think it's important to understand just the basic business structuring of whether you have voting shares and non-voting shares, and what are you transferring in any of those events. Not only am I transferring ownership in two franchises to someone who knows nothing about the other franchise, but am I giving that person a voice at the table that has the right to challenge any decisions I make as a business owner. So if you can understand from a business structuring that as you grow, multiple entities make sense, and having clarified voting and non-voting shares of stock with each of those entities creates the ultimate flexibility for any business owner to be able to allocate interests of stock where they feel, without giving away voting shares, without tying somebody into another entity. And from a banking perspective, having those separate is important also just for clarity of cash flow and performance of the business, going forward.
Yeah, Nate, one of the other key aspects of succession planning when it comes to the banking is the credit continuity between one generation of ownership and the next generation of ownership. So if you have another generation coming up, the banks need to be able to know that they can trust them with loans and the refinancing. So we encourage business owners to get that next generation of ownership kind of in the fold pretty quickly or pretty early so that they can build those relationships with the banks.
Yeah, and you might be able to speak to this, Nate, a little bit maybe, but I think one of the other considerations is when you're transferring ownership to a new owner, usually the franchisor wants to know who is this new owner, what are the requirements of that person to be qualified to be an owner in that entity or represent the franchise. Also, what kind of rights does that new owner have as it relates to operations? Because franchisors typically only want to deal with one person, and they want to know generally, is this someone who we're going to have to deal with in the future?
What I love about both of your answers, and I think is so instructive, is as much as I think of myself as an emotionally intelligent lawyer, Jeff, your first answer was that you went right to, what is the family member's interest? What do they want to do? And it's so important. It's kind of it's the part of what you guys do that I kind of love, which is that, as a lawyer, we just sort of blow by that stuff. And I start giving you the technical answers of, hey, it's 10% ownership and down. It doesn't have to personally guarantee it. And you don't need approval for this level of transfers. And you guys are all over the, let's get the next generation involved and slot them where they want to be. And I think it is such an overlooked part of this, especially when you have like an initial generation who's just a hard charging, let's do this entrepreneur who maybe doesn't see a difference between the two brands. It's like, hey, I'm just running a thing. And that next generation, like, went and got an MBA, came back, and now they're running the business, and they just see it really differently. And moving them carefully into position is overlooked and understated in terms of its importance.
This is only one out of our 8-episode series focused on ensuring long-term profitability in multi-brand franchising. Continue listening to the series now or come back for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new. Succession planning allows you to create more control over the future you envision by proactively addressing possible, probable, and potential issues impacting your long-term goals. You can create many options at your fingertips. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Jeff, Greg, or Nate at the email addresses listed on the screen. Strategic alignment, ensuring long-term profitability in multi-brand franchising, is a part of the Rawls Group's Advancing Your Business, People, and Legacy Conversation series.